Welcome to Property Development Feasibility Study for a land subdivision project, and we are using the Smart Feasibility Calculator to be able to do the same feasibility that we're doing for this project, which is the land subdivision, and it is the same case study that we continue working on, but this feasibility is going to be in a lot more detail. And I'll walk you through everything. So Smart Feasibility Calculator is very similar to the 1 minute Feasible. However, this is way more detailed and it is a lot more flexible, and it allows you to enter as many items of cost centers that you would want to add to it. So these sections are exactly the same as we've had before. We set up our project sensitivity or the target development margin of 20%, cost sensitivity at 5 and 3. But there's certain extra assumptions here. So for example, residential development sell. So we are going to sell them and our costs are going to be about 2.6% as our costs of selling them. We've got sales value calculation based on market value per unit because we are developing lots. So we are going by each unit is equal to a lot. Then we've got construction cost calculations based on, again, construction cost per lot, and a lot is equal to unit in Smart Feasibility Calculator. So in terms of costs, we have the land purchase price, we have the stamp duty that we've already calculated, and the closing cost. We don't have any finance whatsoever because these values are 0. And in terms of units, we've now figured out that we're doing a 15 lot subdivision and each unit averages about 458.2. So that's the built area. So in case you were developing a townhouse development, you would have a built area and a saleable area. But when you're doing a land subdivision, your built area and your sale area is going to be exactly the same. So we're going to go with just the lot size here in both of these sections. We've estimated out of all the tenders that we did out and got a quote, or we figured out that it was going to be $83,000 to connect all the services to each lot so that it can be subdivided. And once all the services were connected, we could subdivide, get individual titles out, and they would come out to be about, when we sell them, they will be about $390,000 each lot, and that would include GST when we sell them. So because this is land subdivision, there is not going to be any kind of interim income during that time. So let's look at our development costs. So we've got construction costs for residential because we didn't do there's no commercial units here, and sales commission. So we figured out that's about $152,100 including GST, and that amount includes GST, so we can check that on and off over here. Now these are different sections, so we explained what each of them are. If you are using Smart Feasibility Calculator, you just have to click on this video and it'll walk you through what each one of does. But for the purpose of this video, we are just discussing a case study. So we've got consultant reports pre-permit, so that is all the money that we will spend to get the report before a permit is issued, and then we would need to get certain other permits and reports before starting construction. So you can't allow just one of them, like you could put 220,000 here and that would also work. However, if you want more detail or more split, you can do that in Smart Feasibility Calculator. So we've allowed miscellaneous marketing expenses like brochures, flyers, things like that, about $750K. We've allowed a 5% contingency on all of these, and we know that the development fees or the council contribution fees or statutory fees, charges, whatever it is, that you might refer to, will amount to about $441,000 for the whole project. So we've got that. We've got our closing costs per unit about $2,000, but could be legal, could be contracts and so on. And in our blank section where we can enter multiple line items or cost centers, we've allowed for an accountancy cost of about $7,500 to set up the trust, to set up the various other things that would go with it. So that's what we've allowed here. Under funding, we've allowed, so what funding table actually does is it actually puts everything together in perspective and gives you a list of all the costs that you've got, and then allows you to individually add a percentage that would either add that total to a total that the bank would consider as a total development cost, and what will be funded by you as a developer from your developer's equity. So this is a complex concept, and if you sign up for the trial, you'll be able to access more details about it, and you can then understand it. But in a nutshell, a funding table is required to figure out what the bank would consider as your total development cost of the project. Now, in this scenario, in this case study, we didn't go to a straightforward bank, so this wasn't applicable anyway. We went to a off-market hard money lender to figure out what we can get. So we figured out that all we needed was 1.4 million in developers equity. That means I had a number that I had to come up with, or my students had to come up with, and then the money that we could borrow, which effectively came out to be about 63.4% of the total LVR. And that is the option that we chose. Now, we had another option. If we were going to go with the bank's calculated total development cost, we could put a percentage here. If you wanted to go with the total development cost, so every cost that under the sun that is incurred in this project, and we go as a percentage of that, we could have gone with that. Or we could have gone with the total sales value. But in this scenario, we went to a private equity firm. We figured out this is what we could borrow from them and at what percentage, and that's what we went with. So under finance, you'll see that we've got the construction loan or senior debt, and we've got that for 100%. That means that's what is getting funded, and we're going to use that for 12 months, and the interest is going to be 9%. The setup fee is going to be 1%. There is not going to be any monthly fee, but the draw intensity now in all the other examples that you would have seen, that I usually put the draw intensity at 60% because not all the money is drawn up front. However, in this particular scenario, depending upon the terms of the loan agreement that my students signed here, the loan that they got was that they would have to pay interest on the full amount from day one, because it was only getting used for 12 months. Now, we estimated that our work would be dusted, everything in about 9 months, but we allowed an extra 3 months just to be sure, so that we have something allowed here if the project was to extend beyond that period. So the draw intensity was that we start paying interest on that amount from day one, so on the full amount. And this is for you to account for developers equity. If you had investors, let's say you had investors, and the 1.4 that you were coming up with, you wanted to split that with investors, and you were coming up with 20% of it, and the investors were coming up with 80% of it, you could split that. And if you were charging interest or paying interest on that amount as well, you could charge that to the project as well. But in this scenario, we are not doing any of that, so we will leave that as it is. We've got our total equity, and it also shows you that you would need about 39,000 in input credits, because when you go to a second tier lender, they may or may not fund your GST input credits, or they may give you a separate facility for it. So if you want to account for that facility, you could enter the developer's equity buffer is exactly for that. So if you wanted to add extra amount in it and capture the interest and charge it to the project, you could do that over here as well. So that's the finance side of things. Now, this is using Smart Feasibility Calculator. If you haven't got it, click the link below and sign up today. There's a 7-day trial that you can go through, or you can go into we can continue with the project and its summary here. So it shows us what the project residual land value is going to be. So you see, as compared to the feasibility that we did in the previous video, using 1 minute Feasible for the same project, we could pay a lot more because we had loosely based our assumptions to see whether or not it was worth going ahead with it. But in this scenario, we've sharpened everything. got quotes, we've tendered out projects, and we figured out this is what it's going to be. So even then, it turned out to be about 1.49 million in profit for this, and we got all the details. In fact, we were spending about 178,000 before we were ready for construction to get the permit. And the deal that we had with the lender was that we might be able to get this amount of money back when the construction loan was funded, so that we could use as least amount of our equity as possible. So you see, this is less than the land value. So we borrowed the money, paid the landowner after the option agreement was completed and executed, and we got some money back for construction equity at that time as well that we had spent. So we didn't have to spend all of that. But altogether, the total equity required was 1.4, and everything else fell into place. So that's the feasibility. There's a link below the video where you can watch this, watch the published version of it, and go through it. If you've got any questions and you're watching this on YouTube, put your question in the comment, or sign up for Edge and create a scenario and let me jump in and help you out with it.